Hey out there and welcome. I'm Kate and this is Tutorial Tuesday. Today's pose is headstand. Woohoo! I'm going to show you a couple of tips and tricks that I've learned along the way to help you feel more confident and stronger as you move into your headstand practice. You're going to want a blanket and a little bit of wall real estate. We're going to use some feet on the wall. It's going to be great. So go ahead, get yourself ready, and let's do this. All right, so we're here. You've got your blanket. You're going to go ahead and throw it out in front. So all of these tutorials come with the idea that you have probably and most likely warmed up and you're not just coming into this cold, or that you're just sitting behind your screen eating some popcorn watching me make a fool of myself. Either way, you're going to grab your blanket, slide it to the front of your mat, and come on into table. So the first thing I like to do, especially with people who have not done a lot of headstand work, is to work into a pose called Sarangasana. So Sarangasana allows you to find a little bit of weight on your head and to control it very, very intensely, I suppose. So you want to make sure when you're going into your headstand practice that the placement of your head is pretty much on point, right? So there was a rule at some point I learned there was like 3 fingers or 4 fingers away from your hairline. I don't know, everyone's hairline is different and it, tends to move as we get older. So I would say the general rule of thumb is when you get into your pose, if when you come down, your chin is tucked too much to your chest, you're gonna feel like you're gonna like roll backwards, right? There's too much pressure going that way, right? And if you end up in your more toward your forehead, when you start to bear weight, you're gonna feel it here because it feels super crunched. And we're like, nah. There is a sweet spot, I promise, if you just kind of play around for a second, that if you kind of take your chin gently in toward your chest and you place your head on the floor, you're not too far onto your forehead, so you're like looking straight into the blanket, and you're not crunched back too much here, right? There is that sweet spot that you feel like I can press into the center of the top of my head. I can feel my shoulders lift away from my ears, and you can start to feel like you can push into the floor with your head without causing strain on your neck and without making it feel like you can't breathe, okay? So those are like dramatizations, but I do implore you with all of my might to find that sweet spot where it feels like your neck is still as neutral as possible as we move into this. That's the first kind of tip here. And you can practice with it and you will learn eventually. It will just kind of pop out to you that, oh, this is where I want to be. All right? So Sarangasana starts in table. This is rabbit pose. And you're going to do that, find that exploration, and then find that sweet spot. Boom, head comes to the mat. You're not super crunched through your back of your neck, and your throat is not super closed up, right? You can push into your hands. You've got like a triangle. Hands are at the bottom ends of the triangle. The crown of your head, the top of your head is like the apex here, right? Elbows in, you can push into your hands, and here we are. This is like the prep. And maybe this is where you want to stop today because you're not used to bearing weight on your head. That's awesome. If you feel comfortable, you can pop onto your fingertips here. You want to make sure that your shoulders aren't drooping down toward your ears, but that your shoulders are lifting away from your earlobes, and that the center of your head can push gently into the floor, which is why we have a blanket here, right? It makes it softer. And you've got the length through the sides of your neck, and you don't feel anywhere that it's like crazy town. All right, so you can pause there and then rest if you want. Or you can kind of hang out for a second and then take your fingers behind your back and interlace them. Then you're gonna drag your knuckles up and away from you. Shoulders stay lifted. Top of your head keeps pressing into the floor. Core is engaged, right? My toes are tucked. I like that better. It feels more active, but you can untuck your toes. It's up to you. And just breathe here for maybe 3 seconds, maybe 5, whatever feels comfortable. When you're ready to disengage, Hands come back down, and you're just gonna roll yourself back into a child's pose. You can make little pillows with your hands and relax here. And just breathe, and you get this delightful, like, buzzing energy at the top of your head. Okay, so that's Sarangasana, that's rabbit pose. And if you really want to start to work into headstand and you're really not sure where to go, that is a great place to start. You start to build up awareness about how it feels physically in your head, in your neck, in your shoulders, everywhere, and you can go from there, right? So my next thing, it might be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to say it. I like to practice headstand in the middle of the room, and I learned headstand in the middle of the room for the sole reason that I wasn't going to go upside down until my body was strong enough to hold me upside down. That being said, if that does not work for you, then take it to the wall and work to the wall. I'm saying it only because momentum, like kicking for momentum in headstand, is not something I teach in my classes. And it's not something I encourage in my classes. So that's me. That's a me thing. And that's where I'm going to leave it. So the next thing I like to do to build strength for headstand and for being able to come into headstand in the middle of the room is actually a practice at the wall. So you're going to find your wall space, take a seat, legs out in front. This is going to be longer than 5 minutes. I'm sorry, but this is like a biggie. So we're going to keep this to 10, I think, if we can. So measurement, right? Back to the wall, heels out in front. You're going to come into table about where your heels are, right? So the heels of your hands where the heels of your feet are. And then you're going to lower onto your forearms. So your elbows are actually where your heels were. All right, so here we go. So you can come into like a sphinx kind of arm, right? Like a forearm stand dolphin kind of arm. For the sake of this, I'm going to come into interlaced fingers because I'm not as warm as I should be. And this is a gentler version on your shoulder. So you can interlace your fingers, right? And then from here, you're going to tuck your toes and lift your knees. Here you are, right? So you're in down doggy kind of dolphin-y thing at the wall. And then you're going to take 1 foot up the wall and walk him up. So we're in like a 90-degree angle here. And now you can see my head is off the floor. So you want your head to be off the floor, but you want your gaze to be back toward the wall, right? And then you're just gonna slowly lower yourself down so your head is on the floor. And then press into your forearms, press into those fists, lift yourself up off the floor. And you're gonna keep doing these like inverted kind of push-ups. You can start to feel where you have control now through your forearms. You can decide how much weight goes onto the top of your head or how little weight goes onto the top of your head, right? So a few of those. You can add those, like bake them into your practice. Any kind of dolphin, any kind of forearm stand work is also going to be really great for building the upper back and like upper body awareness to how you can press away from the floor and control what kind of weight is moving down into your head and your neck, right? So we talked about a little bit momentum in the beginning, right? And I just mean that you want to get that control first, right? I think it's very important to get the control, the body awareness, all of that first. It's not like we're flailing around in a handstand and we can flip out of it. Your neck is involved, right? And it's not something that's used to bearing the weight of your body. So being safe and building strength to support your headstand is super important. So any like forearm plank, forearm, Panchamayurasana work, right? Dolphin work, that'll help to kind of build all of this stuff. Okay, so the next step at coming into headstand is doing a tripod headstand. So you can do 2 versions of headstand, like as a kind of more walking in beginner to headstand, right? You can do a tripod headstand, which is where we started when we were doing our Sarangasana, our rabbit pose, or you can do fingers interlaced like we had here at the wall. So there are pros and cons. The tripod headstand is going to give you more stability, yes? Because your head's here, your hands are out here, you've got hands that you can push into the floor, you've got this wider base. but there is less base around your neck. So your head and your neck are going to take, it's going to be like a third of the weight bearing, right? Because we're spread out. If you come into this version here, you've got more to push into, you've got more support for your neck, but this version is more challenging to get into because the base is smaller and you have to draw your knees into your chest instead of coming into our tripod that we always did in high school or whatever we did in grade school, right? So that's going to be our next step, is to move into a tripod, as long as you've built the strength and the comfort with keeping the weight on your head, right? So you can practice here. Head down to the floor, find that sweet spot, right? Back of your neck, throat, it all feels nice and open and supported. Hands come out so elbows can come to 90 degrees, right? Push into those hands and then you can lift your knees. Here we are. I've got this like triumvirate of power between my hands and my head, elbows in. You can walk your knees in, and just like I did 2 seconds ago, knees come up. And from here, if you're feeling like super saucy, you can work your way up. Maybe one leg at a time, maybe both legs, I don't know, right? So there's the first way to do it. Slightly less support for your head, but like I said, it's easier to get your feet off the floor because you've got the shelf of your knees. Okay, I promise we're almost done. So now the other way is to come into it with these fingers interlaced, and that's slightly more challenging. So I like to come down and interlace my fingers. You can tuck your pinky in your fists. You can keep your pinky out. I'm a pinky out kind of girl. You get to pick. Elbows underneath your shoulders, same deal. You're gonna tuck your head in. Some people like to cup their head with their hands. That's not my deal, but you can play with what works for you, right? You're gonna press into your elbows, press into your forearms, press into your hands. Feel your shoulders lift away from your ears, lift your knees. And now we're here, and this is where it gets tricky because you have to start to walk in. Start to tip your hips toward your shoulders, and you feel like you're just gonna go ass over tea kettle in that direction toward the top of your mat. But it's okay. We're gonna work on coming into a little ball. One knee comes in, maybe you find that tipping point, the elbows press, the other knee comes in, and you start to work from there. The egg process is much more challenging than the knees on the elbows tripod process. The egg process requires you to walk in, get super tight, feel your low belly lift, right? You can't egg from here. It's super hard to do. You got to kind of come in as much as you can and do your best to get your hips to stack toward your shoulders. And then you press. And I'm making it look like I'm not doing any work, but there's a lot of work going on. It's just figuring out that tuck. So that is some low core work. So you can go find one of my core workouts. There aren't that many on here, but go find a good core workout that you like to do that gets you into this position of curling in, right? Okay, I talked a lot more than I meant to. I hope some of this was helpful. Please drop a comment below. Let me know if there are any tips and tricks that you know that I have not mentioned. There are tons, I'm sure. I didn't include everything. There are other ways of doing this. Let's learn together. Thank you so much, and I look forward to practicing with you again soon. Make it a great day.